Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Another Tuesday night, another set of college football playoff rankings, and not a ton of change. I think the center of attention for a lot of college football fans probably going to be what's going on in the ACC and the Big 12. Like how many bids are both of these football teams or both of these conferences going to get? That's where I want to start my conversation, and Dill also talk about some of the bigger movers that we've seen in the college football playoff rankings as well. As always, fired up to get into it. Boys are going live every Tuesday night now. No, we're still trying to figure out how to go live and how to see all the comments, but we appreciate you guys rocking with it. Y'all do enjoy the content. Consider subscribing to the channel, and hey, let it fly in the chat comment section too, and we'll kind of get to some takes. But Dill, I'm gonna put you on the tee box first. Biggest takeaways? How about biggest criticisms that you have for the college football playoff committee?
I think it's got to be where they're slotting those two Big 12 teams, right? Because that to me feels like it's kind of like a barrier, frankly, to
Yeah,
a non-conference winning ACC bid. And frankly, of those teams, BYU, Utah, Miami, I don't really see how you could make a case for Utah or BYU over Miami, who does have that huge win over Notre Dame. And then you got a couple of teams who
yeah.
they haven't beaten really anybody, for lack of better terms.
I am inclined to agree with that, especially how that loss looked for BYU. And Dill, here's the other thing that
I'm
I'll
kind of
say.
with you. I think like a real drubbing should matter, where it didn't like you didn't even belong in the same field like that. I'm kind of with you. That should be
I
more
think
of a
that's
thing.
fair. And then also, I feel like Utah is just pulling a lot of weight here. I mean, Utah and Greg McElroy said this on the broadcast, and quite frankly, I agree. Like Utah's best win is at home against Cincinnati, and they blew them out. But still, Cincinnati lost neutral site to Nebraska to start the year. So kind of getting a sense of where these conferences lie. I don't know if Utah should be the 13th team in these rankings. And then that's why you have BYU not really falling that much back, because BYU does have the head-to-head over Utah.
Because it's gonna put them in a tough spot. Like Miami can win out, but like, look, BYU and Utah, I don't think they're gonna lose. They're playing kind of tomato.
I see. I will push back on that, especially with BYU and especially in the Big 12 in general. And quite frankly, you can say the same thing for Miami. Like, as much as I think Miami has a chance to win out and they should win out, nothing's a guarantee with Mario Cristobal and the Miami Hurricanes. That's for sure. Can I offer another? Miami's an interesting team, right? Because it looks murky for them to get into the ACC championship. So it looks murky for them to get into the playoffs winning the ACC. But they do feel like a team that feels like a college football playoff team, even though they're a little bit inconsistent. They by far, out of the teams that are not in the college football playoff field, like Miami clearly has one of the best wins against Notre Dame or earlier in the year. I want to introduce two different parts of this conversation regarding Miami. Number one, USF seemingly as the league dog in the race to get that GFED. That's big for Miami because that's a win that they can point to say, hey, they're in the college football playoffs. That better argument for Miami. And Dill, the second team I want to mention, Pitt at 22. Pitt plays Notre Dame at home. What does that result look like? Is Pitt a ranked team when Miami goes on the road and plays them the last week of the season? Because the problem with Miami, and I apologize, I'm rambling. I think the issue with Miami here is, do they have a chance to make a statement to the committee? Ideally for Miami, that chance is the last Saturday on the road against Pitt, where you can kind of put a stamp on, hey, we should be a college football playoff
Well,
team.
and honestly, Pitt beating Notre Dame would not do two things. One, it makes that win look better, but also probably takes Notre Dame totally out of the picture. And
Yeah.
that, again,
Yeah.
it frees up one of those non-conference winning bids. And Miami needs help in that. Like, there's no doubt about it because they don't control
Yep.
their own destiny
Yep.
into that
Agree.
non-conference bid, especially given where those two Big 12 teams are ranked.
I will say this. It felt like Miami was eliminated from the playoffs when they lost to SMU. I'm not so sure I would go that far. If they take care of business, because it's not just like one thing. It's like multiple different things that could happen where Miami could find their way into the playoffs. I think the other thing is, Texas and Oklahoma. Let's start with Texas here. Texas at 10. They have a very, very difficult schedule. Do you think Texas gets into the college football playoffs with 3 losses as we sit right now?
Yeah, because that means they beat a top 5 team, right? That's kinda where I'm looking. Like, I'm not sure they're gonna do it. Frankly, I don't necessarily project it. But yeah, if they go 2 or 3 loss record, they're in, because that's a huge win over either end.
I think so too, and it's because of when that win's going to take place. So even though they might have 3 losses, if you can notch a win on the road at Georgia or at home against Texas A&M in the last Saturday of college football, that's going to carry some serious weight. Oklahoma's probably doesn't have that luxury, right? You know, if Texas is a 3-loss team, Oklahoma's a 3-loss team, Texas is going to be the team getting in, and Oklahoma's probably the team that's on the outside looking in. I'll continue to say, like, I think that matchup with Oklahoma going on the road to play Alabama, I think that's one that is pretty favorable to Oklahoma. So I'm interested to see if they can get that done. Where else do you want to go in this conversation, Dill? To me, you probably talk about these Big Ten teams. So you have Ohio State and Indiana, who seem like they're a lock to really meet in the Big Ten championship game. You have Oregon. They got to play USC next weekend. They got to go on the road and play Washington. How many Big Ten teams do you see getting in? I think at least 3. Is there a chance that we can get 4 of them?
Yeah, but it'd probably be Michigan, because
I think
honestly,
so
if
too.
USC beats Oregon, I think there's a very unlikely chance that Oregon gets in at that point, because
Yeah.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
And again, Iowa kind of hanging in there in the top 20 definitely kind of helps out, or top 25, I should say, helps. I don't think a 2-loss Oregon team is a guarantee given where they're ranked right now. So it's probably got to be Michigan beating Ohio State, because Ohio State's staying in. Like, they're not going anywhere, I don't think.
Yeah, that's an interesting conversation. 2-loss Oregon. If Oregon does drop a game, do they get into the college football playoffs? I'm not sure. You know, like we knew they had a little bit of an easier schedule in the Big Ten. We thought that big win was going to be Penn State. That one ain't looking so pretty anymore.
Because
That
even their wins, they haven't been like those big time impressive wins. I mean, they've kind of had to gut games out a little bit. And again, it's kind of like, I think people maybe aren't accepting what Oregon is, which is a little bit more of a play really good defense, run the ball, be physical, and be able to take your shots when you get them. So I don't think they're as set up to blow teams out maybe in the way that the other past Oregon teams were that played a little bit
I
faster.
just don't think they're playing their best football. I'm going to disagree. Like I think they just even in that game against Iowa, Dill, like they had their chance to separate in that football game and they didn't. They let out, and Iowa's the best in the world, baby, at hanging around. Iowa hung around, gave Oregon a scare. I guess where I'd want to go next, and this is, I don't know how meaningful this conversation is, but Texas A&M at 3
Well,
with
let's throw it up there, because we got tenacious T01. Is is there an argument for A&M being the number 1 team in the country? Because I certainly.
I don't think I'd put them above Ohio State, but I'd be very okay with maybe bumping them over Indiana. And look, I've been doubting Indiana for 2 years now, and I've just been proven wrong pretty much time and time again. I will say this about Texas A&M: if we're just evaluating these teams, I don't know if there's a more complete team in college football than Texas A&M. I'll just say this: I'm stunned that the national media did not talk about that performance on the road against Missouri and give it a little bit more love. And I get Missouri had a backup quarterback, but let's not pretend for a second that Missouri was a good team in winning football games because of Bo Prabula, right? I look
Well,
at
I think
Ohio.
it proved that this A&M team is just they're like so consistent. They don't ever like have, or they're not even having like moments of weakness right now. Like, their defense is really tightened up, and I know their run defense numbers don't look incredible, but I think again, like, they've started to tackle better. They're not giving up as many big plays, and they are so good at creating negative plays. I love this A&M team. I think there's a really strong case for them being over Indiana right now,
Yeah.
given like the totality of their season. Because Indiana is like in no way deserves to not be in the top 3, and you can make an argument for them
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe at 1 as well, frankly. But they've shown like they've shown a vulnerability, and that's if you can get after their offensive line, which now has happened twice. Iowa and Penn State both did a really good job, are
Yeah.
really getting after it. They've shown a bit of weakness. Ohio State and Texas A&M, to me, like point the weakness out. I just don't see any. I don't see any like flaw in their team.
Well, Ohio State struggles to run the football. That if we were picking flaws, that would be a flaw. And that's what I love about Texas A&M. And I think you're rare. It's a very complimentary football. They're good in all three phases of the sport. And then the last thing that, and this is more of just like do I think they can be a legit threat in the playoffs? They're one of those teams that it feels like they're getting better as the season goes on. Like we just saw the two most complete and dominant performances from Texas A&M all year. They went on the road and got Brian Kelly fired. They go on the road and take care of Missouri in emphatic fashion. Dill, that's an important conversation. Like go back to Ohio State last year and the Texas A&M fans, y'all have heard me say this a million times. Like Ohio State was a good team last year in the regular season. They weren't great, but man, did they hit their stride in the playoffs. I look at Texas A&M. It feels like Marcel Reed gets just more comfortable every single week this kid goes out there. They can lean on the run game. They can win a defensive slugfest if you want them to. I'm buying stock. They'll when the playoff bracket comes out, I could very well see myself picking Texas A&M to win the national championship.
And again, their game control's been on a different level. Like it doesn't feel like they've been threatened in any football games aside from at times in that Notre Dame game. And otherwise, like again, I know Florida's record's not great. LSU's not, like these teams have a ton of talent. They've been able to test teams. Like A&M hasn't really looked vulnerable. That's why
I would love to hear the argument in terms of why they might be overrated. Because this is, and I guess you could make the argument like, all right, what's the most impressive win that they've put together? Like they haven't played Alabama, they haven't played Georgia, they haven't played Ole Miss. I guess we'll really find out when they play Texas at the end of the year. But man,
because frankly, you could make the same case about Indiana and like, oh, okay, Indiana's only really played one team, and
but I think Oregon's a very good team. Here's the thing with Texas.
Well, what are you saying? Notre Dame's not a particularly good team. I think Notre Dame's awesome. I think that's a huge win to go beat Notre Dame.
Wait, who are we talking about now that beat Notre Dame?
A&M, like why they're an overrated team.
Okay, that's fair. Again, hand up. Forgot. Almost forgot about that. No, very much hand up. They went on the road and beat Notre Dame, and Dill, it turns out Notre Dame's not bad. It's just Texas A&M might be that team.
I saw someone like saying, "Oh, they're playing teams with losing records or whatever in the SEC." Like, yeah, there's a lot of teams that have losing records, but again, to be able to like dominate wall to wall against teams like Auburn, Florida, LSU, like. Yeah. Those are teams that have given really good fights to some really good teams like Alabama and Georgia. Like we've seen those teams play really good ball. I don't see a great argument for saying A&M's overrated.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna say this. I think they're clearly the top three teams in the country right now. And I think Alabama is working their way into that conversation. And Dill, quite frankly, and I've been very critical of Georgia because at times, look, Georgia had to be ranked high because they built up a good resume. They never felt like a top 5 team in the country. They felt that way against Mississippi State. They're kind of getting them. So I am very excited to see this, Dill. Georgia plays Texas this weekend. Texas has the number 2 rushing defense in the country. Georgia's run game has been coming on. And I think there are certain questions about, hey, can Gunnar Stockton go out? Can Gunnar Stockton win this game with his arm against Texas? And I think we're going to find out Saturday night. And the result of that game is going to have a lot of feel for how I view Georgia as we roll into the college football playoffs.
Yeah, honestly, to me, it's more about Texas because I think we still haven't seen Texas put together enough like 4-quarter games. They've really had one, and that was Vanderbilt. And you could probably say that was a 3-quarter game. When they look like they hit their strides, and if their big dogs play at a high level, like if you get Simmons going and you get Anthony Hill going, like they can be
that is a like Georgia Texas this weekend feels like it could be a springboard for either one. Like whoever wins that game, both of these teams we know have the firepower to bang for a national championship. Neither of them really have played their best football yet. Who wins that game and can that get them into high gear? Feels like a really, really big storyline here. I want to talk Notre Dame. Somebody said Notre Dame is the most improved team. Yeah, I mean, I'll say this still. We talked about Texas A&M being a very complete football team. They don't really struggle, and they have a quarterback you like. Dill, Notre Dame, how many quarterbacks are you taking over CJ Carr? Their ability to run the football against anybody in the country. And I think the biggest storyline is that that defense is starting to remind me of the defense we saw last year.
Well,
And
I think this week will be very revelatory, frankly, because I think, like, again, they've been playing weak teams. They haven't been playing the greatest offense in the world, and I'm kind of with you. I think we kind of wrote them off because of how bad A&M made them look. I think now we just realize A&M is kind of an awesome offense. I do think this Pitt game kind of like it'll be a nice litmus test because Pitt, again, I don't know that they're a super complete team, but they certainly can move the ball on offense, especially through the air. And that's where Notre Dame's been vulnerable at times, is they give up too many big plays in the air. So if they can really kind of put a lid on this Pitt team, that pushes like that narrative forward, I think, greatly. Like that Notre Dame's defense is not maybe what we thought it was for the first 3 games.
If I'm an opposing college football team and I'm trying to pick the opponent I'd want to play in the playoffs, Notre Dame would be pretty dang near the bottom. I would not want to play this Notre Dame team in the playoffs. I see there's a lot of pathways for Miami, and look, I've put a lot of said it. Is there a pathway for Miami? And I really do think there is, and unfortunately for Miami, the committee is telling us that it's not in Miami's hands. But there are things. USF carries a lot of weight, and I don't want to retract what we talked about when we opened it. I'm looking at Pitt if I'm a Miami fan. I am the biggest Pitt Panther fan in the country if I'm a Miami fan this week. And if Pitt beats Notre Dame drops behind Miami, Pitt vaults up, and you have that opportunity to go on the road and knock off Pitt. That is the pathway. You can talk about all the chaos in the ACC you want, and you might get that. This conference has been absolutely out of its damn mind. If you're a Miami fan and you want to see Miami in the playoffs, you want to see Pitt get it done this weekend against Notre Dame. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but I think that is what you are rooting for if you were a Miami fan.
You took that. I was going to take that comment too, because I feel like we haven't talked enough Ohio State maybe since like week 1, because they haven't really been challenged exactly since then. I think we're like almost like sleep, like they're putting us to sleep a little bit. Like, oh, they're like, well, is a Washington win that impressive? Is Penn State win that impressive? All those things. I'm looking at what that passing attack looks like. That is deadly scary. I mean, Julian Sayin is such a massive upgrade in terms of what they can do running a high-level passing attack from what Will Howard was. And, I mean, you might have the 2 best wide receivers in the country. I don't even think that's crazy. Like, Carnell Tate is legitimately playing at that level. OSU is awesome. I mean,
Ohio State, if I was talking about teams that aren't as good as their record, there's a lot of other teams I'd bring up before I bring up Ohio State. And now, look, does Ohio State have their flaws? Yeah, you can make that argument. I think their lack of ability to run the football is, and we're going to find that out against Michigan, right, Dill? I mean, Michigan did it last year. They stopped the run. They got after the passer. I'll say this, what I'm most interested with Ohio State is if they have to become one-dimensional against a team like Michigan, can they drop back? Can they hold up in pass protection? And here's the other thing that I still want to see from Ohio State. And look, I am by no means trying to drag Ohio State down because I think they're very good. Can Julian Sayin be that guy that can get himself out of trouble the way Will Howard did? Now,
he doesn't get himself into trouble because he is really, really quick. I mean, again, I'll like pull this comment, like what defense, like we just saw what Penn State was able to do against a really, really good Indiana offense. Ohio State, I mean, they made them look like a JV team. Like they were really just taking what they wanted through the air, doing their thing. Like I just think Julian Sayin is so much sharper than Will Howard as just a pure quarterback. Again, I know he's not the athlete, and maybe that does come to bite him when they play.
What Jordan's saying is, wait till he gets to meet Cassius Howell, and then we'll see how good Julian Sayin is.
Again, I'm not taking that away from A&M and saying they're can't beat Ohio State. I'm just like Ohio State to me is
in my mind. I'm starting to chef up these matchups in my head, like Ohio State. That'd be an electric college football playoff national championship. There's some chatter about Vanderbilt. I think that's probably a fair ranking for Vanderbilt. I'll pull up their schedule and you can kind of give your takes about Vanderbilt. Where are Vanderbilt's wins?
But where are their wins? Yeah, they have some of those for sure, but they also...
Well, I don't know if... that's a good point, though, right? Because they went on the road and beat South Carolina, that at the time was the 11th best team in the country. South Carolina stinks. And then they beat LSU at home. At the time was the 10th best team in the country. LSU stinks. And then they play Missouri at home, and Missouri was in there with them, Dill, lost their starting quarterback. And I'm not trying to be like revisionist history, but if you were to go back and say, what's their best win, it probably is against Missouri at home that had to go to their true freshman backup quarterback in the second half of that game.
See, my bigger issue probably with what Vandy's done is just being in every game, like no game, they're just controlling a game wall to wall. Every game is a bit of a battle. Like that's what separates a team like A&M, who just every game is the opposite of a battle. They control every game, kind of dominate every game. You look at Vandy, I personally don't find like the LSU Missouri type wins is like these no big deal wins. Like I think those are good, clean wins on your like resume. But I don't love the fact that every time you play a team like Auburn or Missouri, those teams that again have their flaws, but are also have some really good elements of what they're doing. I don't love the fact that every game is close and they can't control a game. Like every game it's wire to wire. I like teams that can dominate.
I think that's fair. When you want to have that conversation between Vanderbilt and Miami, because I saw somebody say Miami should be above Vanderbilt, I don't think I'd push back against that. Vanderbilt has better losses, right? Like their losses look prettier, but Miami's got that win that Vanderbilt doesn't have. Like again, Vanderbilt's pointing to their best win, and that team you can't find on this graphic. Miami points to the number 9 team in the country. And I just going back to my philosophy, man, and that is I give me the teams that have notched really impressive wins as opposed to the teams that have dropped an ugly loss or two. We saw that last year when we put in teams like SMU over Ole Miss and Alabama, and SMU plays Penn State and they just get thumped. Like they had a pretty record, man. What was it, 11-1 with the conference loss to Clemson? This pretty record. But like they didn't have that win. It's like, hey, we're a college football playoff team. Miami does. And they've looked that way too at times.
That's the big thing with Miami where you're going to make that argument is like, honestly, they've been the better team on the field in pretty much every one of their games. Mario Cristobal, he's got that loser ball in him, which is wildly frustrating. Like why do they commit penalties at really bad times?
They'll want to know what's the most frustrating part about that. Want to know what's the most sorry to cut you off. The most frustrating part about that is like he gets up there and preaches like discipline so much, and then you see that team on the field and it's like we're losing because of these pre-snap penalties and not finishing drives. I want to put you on the spot here real quick, Dill. Who's your Heisman? Right? Not predicting. If you were to we're a little Heisman Trophy committee right now, me and you. Mom's
Ty Simpson it is for me. I don't think there's a guy who's kind of carrying a show as much as he is. Maybe that's probably my guy. I think Julian Sayin maybe has a little bit more around him, and that's not to take anything away from Alabama's wideouts. I know they're awesome, but no run game. Although Ohio State also doesn't have a run game, but no run game.
I'll say this: so Julian Sayin has the chance to win the Heisman on the road at Michigan, right? Like he hasn't really had that Heisman moment yet. Like Fernando Mendoza had that moment against Penn State. Ty Simpson has had that moment. Julian Sayin hasn't had that opportunity. If Julian Sayin goes on the road in late November and beats Michigan and puts up 300 yards, Julian Sayin has my vote too, I would think.
No, not two, because I have Ty Simpson.
Fair enough. If I gotta some, I'll never say die on Miami, and it's like I just think this team's too good not to be in the playoffs, right? That's just my take. I think they're a team that can bang with anybody in the country, and I know they don't necessarily deserve it with the 2 losses. I ain't going to say die on this football team, man, because I think they're too good. If you had a choice, you have to
think I think this is a really interesting. I think this is going to be a really intense battle.
Miami, not even close. I think 10-2 Miami.
You don't think Oklahoma? I was kind of going to say Oklahoma has a really good case. I think in that case.
Okay, I'll
because Oklahoma's been through a gauntlet, and again, I think like in hindsight, maybe their record's not quite as good or their schedule wasn't quite as hard as maybe we thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
but they've been through an absolute gauntlet. They've been in pretty much every game aside from maybe that Texas game that they were in it for the most part and let it get away from them a little bit down like later third quarter, fourth quarter. I think Oklahoma has a really strong argument over Miami if they go 9-3. That'll be a really interesting kind of battle.
Yeah, I would definitely take Miami over a 10-2 Miami over 10-2 Vanderbilt because they have that win.
Yeah.
9-3 USC probably does not get in. 9-3 Michigan definitely doesn't get in. 9-3 Oklahoma would be the only 3-loss team. Them and Texas are really the only 3-loss teams that I think would have an argument. And Texas would be the team that if there's going to be a team with 3 losses that gets in, my answer would be.
But their path to 3 losses is murky.
Yeah,
I just don't really see it happening.
100%. And Dill, I'll even say this: to me, it almost depends on how that game looks on the road against Alabama. Like if you're really, really competitive in that one, yeah. Me and Mike on the same page. I saw another 10-2 USC gets in. Yes, if USC beats Oregon in the playoffs, 100% getting in. Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm very interested to see what USC does against Iowa this weekend because look, I need to see them stop a team that wants to run because one of the things about Oregon that they go and run the ball. And at times we've seen USC struggle to stop the run. I need to see USC go out and beat Iowa. And if it looks right, that game in Eugene, Oregon is going to be a college football playoff game. Because I think if you're USC, you beat Oregon. I think a 2-loss Oregon, we already talked about, a 2-loss Oregon team is probably not getting in.
Well, if it's the 2-loss, it'll be USC. What are you going to take? USC with the head-to-head is getting in over them, and then that puts them in that really tough spot where they're not going to be in the Big Ten championship game, obviously, and they're going to have a couple of teams ahead of them that I don't think they have the chance to jump.
USC, I'll talk some USC. I mean, when you have an offense the way USC can score, you're going to be a team that can bang with a lot of different. I mean, you can just outscore people. Now, I don't know if that USC defense is quite national championship level yet. Although, shout out Chad Bowden because they're working their way up there. But when you have an offense that can score like USC can, there was a reason they were in that Notre Dame game. There was a reason that they were in that Illinois game, even though they couldn't stop a nosebleed. USC can stay in any game across the country because they can score. Just their margins of winning with that defense. When that defense plays good offenses, they struggle a little bit. USC is going to be fun.
They play in a way on defense sometimes that really kind of sucks the life out of your. Like they just they're not on the field enough. It's like, yeah, man, get this offense a chance to get on.
I don't think so.
Teams where they're just playing way too many snaps.
Sorry, I'm answering comments out loud while you're talking about something else. Hand up.
That was bizarre.
If Utah goes 10-2, doesn't make the Big 12 championship, are they a viable at-large spot?
I mean, the committee's kind of saying maybe yes. Which I think it's a crime, but I don't think it should be.
Point to me the best win that Utah has, and I think the fact that one of your losses was to a close look because you lost at home to Texas Tech, and I feel like Texas Tech had a chance to win that game by a lot, right? And then you lose close to BYU, and then BYU gets smoked by Texas Tech. This is just my personal opinion in terms of the feel, in terms of the gut, in terms of the eyeball. I see one college football playoff caliber team in the Big 12. That's Texas Tech. I mean, when you look at Utah's resume, Dill, it's that the best win that they are pointing to is Cincinnati at home, like the same Cincinnati team that lost to Nebraska earlier. I don't get the vibe that Utah gets in with 2 losses.
It would be egregious. I'd be really upset if it would feel like the Indiana thing a little bit, frankly, from last year, where I think they didn't knock Indiana down probably as much as they should after a couple of those drubbings in the regular season. And then, or after, I should say, the Ohio State beating they took, and then they just kind of skated through, but weren't a playoff team.
This could be fair. I'm going to say USC is what Miami was last year. That is the kind of the vibe you get where Miami's going to be in a lot of games because they can score with anybody. You have that confidence in the defense to go on the road and beat a team like Oregon. We'll see, right? We'll see. I'll say this about USC. I think they're a good football team. I'm not sure if they're national championship good, and I think they can get there as they continue to recruit the way they're recruiting. Lincoln Riley has not done enough long enough on the recruiting trail to make me think they're a national championship caliber team yet. They're doing all the right things, and I think they have a very good chance to turn into that. Just not sure if they're there yet. Georgia, we talked about USC. Yeah, Utah at 13, ridiculous. We definitely agree with that.
Do you think 9-3 Georgia gets in? I'm
So
kinda
they
trying to do
lose
the
to
math.
Texas
I
at
don't
home
think
and Georgia
so,
Tech.
'cause that means they lose a gross one, and then with 3 losses.
Well, how gross are Texas and Georgia Tech? They're both top 20 teams.
No, that I'm saying Texas is a fair play loss. That doesn't bother me that much. A Georgia Tech loss, because I don't think Georgia Tech's particularly good. I think that'd be a gross one for Georgia a little bit. In hindsight, I'm not
I
sure.
do think that they probably do. Well, I don't know because then Texas,
And Oak probably have pretty good claims.
well, Oklahoma, I would put in a 3-loss Georgia team over a 3-loss Oklahoma team because Georgia
Yes,
has
I
those
agree with
wins
that.
against
Yep,
Ole
I agree
Miss.
with that.
That's a great question.
They
I
probably don't control themselves, but, like, again, assuming Michigan and USC don't get to that 10-2 record, you probably have a pretty good case with 3 losses for Georgia, I
Yeah,
think.
I would think they would have a shot. It'd probably have to look right too, but I would think Georgia gets in with
Well,
3 losses.
Georgia doesn't get, like, thumped. I don't think I've seen a world that Georgia gets thumped under Kirby Smart. Everything's a grind.
Oregon will beat USC by 21 plus points. I know you believe that probably closer to, and here's the thing, I it's a good matchup for Oregon. One, because they're going to be in Eugene, but number two, I don't know if USC did enough on the defensive line. Like Keyshawn Silva, the guy they brought in to deal with a team like Oregon that wants to run right at you with big, heavy offensive linemen. I need to see USC. Again, USC needs to show me this weekend against Iowa that they can hold up against the good rushing attack, and I'll have a little bit more confidence that maybe they can go on the road and get it done. But they got to show me, because when you've seen them play Illinois, when you saw them play a team like Notre Dame, it's weird though because they also played Michigan, who's running the piss out of the football, and did pretty dang good job. USC's tricky, man.
Well, they did a really good. I mean, they're just so reliant on negative plays, and that's okay because they're able to generate them. They got some good athletes on that defensive line. It's just
Agreed.
they don't really have much of an answer. If they can't get negative plays, they have a real problem.
I agree with Keyshawn Silver having his best game against Northwestern, but that doesn't blind me from the fact that I don't think he's been good enough for the first 8 of them. It is probably my take on Keyshawn Silver. I will say this: getting Floyd Boucard back up front, it's my guy. I think he's got. I think
I
he's
love
got a
the
chance.
young kids. I think the young kids on USC's defensive line should be playing more because they are the keys to getting negative plays. Like, they get in the backfield, they're a little bit more active and
Yeah.
athletic. They should be on the field more.
Still, I'll say this about, and we were spending a lot of time on USC, but I got takes that the foundation's getting laid the right way. You never really felt that prior. Like there were times where USC was really good with Caleb Williams, but the foundation, it was like a house of cards, you might call it, right? It's like Caleb Williams kind of holding that thing together. You feel the foundation getting built with USC. We'll see if they're there when they go on the road and play Oregon. Yeah, Dill, you better hop on board. You better hop on board before it's too late, brother.
I don't know if I can get on board this
Any
year.
other takes that you want to get off your chest before you round this sucker out?
Aside from, I want Tennessee to be in the playoffs because I think they're awesome and really, really good. And if they do get healthy towards the end of the year,
I
I
know
know they
man.
can't get in, and it just disappoints me because I think Tennessee's awesome.
There are other, yeah. I think that's fair. They
I mean, like, obviously they're not going to be super deserving, clearly, but I just think they're a really good team. I think they're a really good win for teams like Georgia.
I'll say hand up about that. I was wrong about Tennessee. I thought they were 6-6, 7-5. I did not have a ton of confidence, and they certainly, you talk about teams I missed on. Tennessee's one of them. All right. We'll close it out. Hey, appreciate you guys getting active. I'm having a blast answering all of these questions and different talking points. This is very, very fun. We will be doing this a lot more as it gets into like transfer portal stuff. We'll do some live stuff and kind of get some feedback. I'll say this: I'm having a blast. Appreciate you guys. We'll get the live stuff more figured out on our end because we certainly ain't great with it yet, but we're getting better. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.